Uncle Dan,
Hey!
you know what I like?
Please tell me you're not going to get into sexual proclivities.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I like big funny hats.
Well, who doesn't?
That's what I like a lot.
Yeah, we just had Halloween recently.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I once went for Halloween. I went as the Pope, which was a costume that Uncle Mark made the year before.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, Uncle Mark?
It's a hand-me-down because I just knew how to make a pope. I knew how to make the hat.
You're like, I've got a miter saw.
Yeah, exactly.
No, remember you put tape on a sheet, and spray painted it gold, and then pulled the tape off, and it looked like it was like
embroidered
robe.
Oh,
it was
wow,
fantastic.
very
quite a
fancy.
thing.
Yeah.
Are you sure that was a pope and not like a Klansman costume?
And somehow my parents didn't know that I'm a homosexual. Well, if you like funny hats, Doug, you like big funny hats, you're in luck. So we have a fun segment on the show where we like to talk about the saints.
Yeah.
Right? The
when they go marching in,
when they go marching. Yes, sorry, New Orleans. The bizarre and sometimes gruesome and always hilarious profusion of demigods that flutter all over the damn place in the world's second biggest polytheistic religion, Catholicism. And we've had fun talking about St. Drogo and St. Genesius and St. Agatha of Sicily. And her breasts, which are now celebrated as cookies for children, because Catholicism is anything but weird.
Right.
But
very normal stuff.
Today I want to take a minor diversion from our typical saints operation and get a little closer to the source and talk a little bit about the people who make saints. Popes.
Oh, sure.
So
they're sainters.
They're in the saint business. So there have been, by most counts, and they don't all agree, 266 popes since St. Peter first decided to put on one of those fancy pointy hats. And as weird and wacky as the saints certainly are, and oddly enough, many popes become saints because that particular contest does not exclude employees from playing, I guess. The history of the papacy is pretty fucking crazy too. So I thought we'd go a little OP and reach back into the golden age of 9th century Catholicism.
Ooh, what a time to be alive.
What a beautiful time. And wait till you see how beautiful a time this was for a pope that, just couldn't ever seem to get it right and never really found any peace.
Oh.
Today we'll be discussing our friend and the guy that most papal watchers know succeeded Stephen V, but preceded the very brief papacy of Boniface VI. We're talking about Pope Formosus.
Sure.
And
the popus with the mopus.
Since we all know that popes pick their new drag name themselves upon the appearance of the white smoke, this guy had a certain regard for himself because Formosus is Latin for beautiful. So Pope Formosus was probably born around 816 in the vicinity of Rome because all the popes at that time were from the vicinity of Rome. And then at some point he was made the cardinal of this place called Porto, which I found out is one of the 7 critical dioceses around Rome. And if you get one of those, it's a very cherry job. If you get one of those jobs, you're like in the upper echelon.
And that one's like that one was the one that had all the good clubs and
it was good for clubbing for sure, like with wooden clubs with lead plummets.
By the way, when you said the vicinity of Rome, it took me several seconds to realize that you were talking about the area around Rome and not a specific place called the vicinity.
No. Well, it could have been.
There's the diocese and then there's the vicinity and
the El Vicinitato. So it was a sweet job, and then for some reason he was later given the job of papal legate to Bulgaria, which is a job he was very interested in having for some reason. Anyway,
hurrah.
So he got mixed up in major geopolitical shenanigans upon the death of Holy Roman Emperor Louis the Pious, a.k.a. Louis the Fair, a.k.a. Louis the Debonair. No. That's all true. Also notable that he was the son of the fabled Charlemagne. So the nobles then appointed that guy's son, Charles the Bald, no known aliases, as the new Holy Roman Emperor. There was a powerful Italian faction, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was all these crazy geopolitics, and he ended up on the wrong side with Louis the Debonair and somehow pissed off the Pope, so he went into hiding in Tours. Okay. Oh, that's to illustrate that politics were cray-cray. So somehow in all of this, Pope John VIII saw Formosus as a rival, and I'm not sure how because Formosus' story paints him as a middling fuck-up at best. So he had him excommunicated in absentia for despoiling the cloister of Rome and collaborating with certain iniquitous men and women for the destruction of the Holy See.
Can I just say that despoiling the cloister sounds like something that happened on like one of Gordon Ramsay's shows or something?
Despoiling
You've
the cloister.
despoiled the cloister. Now we have to make a whole new one.
I'm sure people were actually burned alive for despoiling cloisters at some point.
Certainly.
Yeah, well.
By Gordon Ramsay. So we discussed what the Holy See was in episode 11. It's really a chair with a diplomatic passport.
Yeah.
But I think in this case it more broadly means the Vatican. So after Pope John VIII was murdered by a poisoner who lost patience with poisoning and so bashed his head in with a hammer.
This poison is taking positively minutes.
So the kinder, gentler, less threatened Pope Hadrian III had Formosus's excommunication lifted before he himself was murdered, and somehow half a dozen years later, Formosus was unanimously elected pope.
Wow.
I didn't dig too deep in this, but again, it's all crazy power politics among the College of Cardinals. Sorry, any Catholic friends who think that this is, divinely inspired. It's
yeah,
just,
I think what you mean to say is God done it.
God done it. So anyway, hooray, Pope Formosus the Beautiful. So, because 9th century Europe was wonderful, the geopolitics that Formosus found himself ensnared in pre-papacy continued to haunt his time on the throne.
Sure.
I'll spare much of the gory detail except to continue to point out some of the fabulous names of the major players in all the cold and hot wars that marked Formosus' papacy. There was, of course, Guy III of Spoleto, and the patriarch Photius of Constantinople and his rival Basil I.
Who doesn't remember those
Naturally.
stories?
Then there was the famous dust-up between Odo, Count of Paris, and Charles the Simple. There was the bloody Arnulf of Carinthia and a guy named Lambert and his mother Agiltrude, just to name a few.
Oh, my God.
So-
if I had children, Agiltrude would be the first top the list for names.
It really rolls off the tongue.
Boy or girl.
And what happens? This one guy gets Pious, the Fair, the Debonair, and his rival gets the Bald.
Yeah.
His son.
His son.
And then another guy just gets the Simple.
Fuck you, kid.
He's dumb. So in short, the elderly but apparently beautiful Pope Formosus' short papacy was a backstabby House of Cards-style mess and not the fun he'd hoped it would be. So he died on April 4th, 896. At long last, this middling, out-of-his-depth priest's earthly life was through and his troubles were over. Except they were just beginning.
What?
Remember Lambert and his mom, Agiltrude, I just mentioned? They were on the losing side of some very twisted palace intrigues that saw them first ruling the Holy Roman Empire under Formosus, then Formosus somehow getting them tossed out by some complicated betrayal. So she was pissed. Boniface VI was crowned pope after he scored a military victory over Lambert and Agiltrude, but he only reigned for 15 days before dying of either gout or murder. His successor, Stephen VI, restored Lambert and Agiltrude to the throne of the Holy Roman Empire, and at her highly vengeful bidding, he presided over what should be one of the weirdest moments in Vatican history, but probably isn't. So Pope Stephen declared what has become known as the Cadaver Synod, or Synodus Horrenda in Latin, in January 897, and the Latin is much closer to the truth. Our friend Formosus had been dead less than a year, yet he was determined competent to stand trial.
Of course.
So his ripened 80-year-old body was dragged from its tomb, dressed in papal vestments, and sat on a throne in a gruesome and ridiculous
Oh, my God.
damnatio memoriae,
Wow.
which is this ancient Roman practice it's called condemnation of memory,
Yeah.
in which some deceased public figure is dragged out to have their record kind of expunged from memory, so their names are chiseled off the monuments and things like that.
Holy shit.
So a deacon of the church stood beside the pile of worm-jiggling rot to act as proxy and answer the charges, while Pope Stephen screamed spittle-flecked harangues at the deceased accused. The court removed the title of pope, re-excommunicated him,
What?
undid every decision he'd made as pope, including undoing appointments of bishops and cardinals, etc., cut 3 fingers off his right hand and threw them into the Tiber River, and dumped his body in an unmarked pauper's grave, only to pull it out 3 days later and toss it in the Tiber River
Oh my God.
as well, where secretly a loyal monk recovered it, which will matter.
Oh my God. Of course it does.
So Stephen VI and his patrons Lambert and Agiltrude had gotten their revenge. If there's ever been a more clearly illustrated argument for church-state separation, I haven't seen it.
Well, I'm also like this concept of the Pope's infallibility sort of brought a little bit into relief on this question
Right.
because
Yeah.
one Pope declaring the previous Pope decidedly fallible is
Unpope. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
I depope you.
and just in case you're talking about popes and their infallibility and their lifespans during the 9th century, in case you were wondering about Pope Stephen's fate, the always impatient and dramatic Romans had been horrified by the idea of the cadaver synod, so a mob of them threw him in a jail cell where he was shortly strangled.
Okay.
It gets even weirder.
It's dangerous to be a Pope in that time.
No doubt.
Like the shortest lived pope was 15 days.
Wow.
Like he made it 2 weeks. So it gets even weirder as several succeeding popes went back and forth on Formosus and the legitimacy of his papacy. What was left of him was put back in St. Peter's, and the appointments that he made were reconfirmed. Then the next one re-unconfirmed, etc.
Oh my God.
Until ultimately there was a second cadaver synod.
No.
Where Pope Sergius had Formosus exhumed again, tried him again, found him guilty again, had him flogged and beheaded. And for us, like
He was still headed at this
I
point?
can't imagine his head was still attached.
They fucking flogged a dead body.
It was just
What could possibly be the point of that?
And for a second and final time, he was thrown in the Tiber. So that's the tale of poor luckless Pope Formosus, fellas.
I'm sorry I couldn't follow this. How many times was he poped and unpoped?
Probably 3 or 4. Well, probably 4 times.
He was thrice buried and twice drowned, beheaded, flogged.
Yeah.
What do you call it when you have your fingers cut off?
He's having a case of the Mondays.
He was the most poped and depoped of any pope.
Yeah, poor guy. Like it all went down after he was dead, which is just hilarious.
Right.
So that's Pope Formosus. The next time the current, maybe a tad less weird good guy pope says gays are still evil, or the church is being persecuted for people noticing they're the SEAL Team 6 of pedophilia, remember this whole tale before considering how seriously to take the papacy.
Right.
The answer is probably not at all.
Wow.
Good God.
There you go.
You know, poping was a lot more interesting back in the day.
Yeah, it was a more sporting kind of event.
Well, and spare a thought for that poor monk who had to fish that twice buried lump of flesh out of the river.
Oh my God. Never wash that off. So anyway,
Lord,
let's move on.
I think we all have to wash, so let's move on.